Welcome to the Americus podcast. My name is John Schroeder, and today I am with Colton Taunton. And very thankful for you to come. Colton is a husband, he's a father, he's an English teacher at Furlow Charter School right here in Americus. Colton, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So me and Colton kind of go way back, almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I was at Friendship Camp. I was one of the people that kind of helped out and did some chaperoning, but also led some music, and got a chance to meet you for the first time as a kind of a camper there. Then you actually did some leading as well and just helping out, being a part of the small group dynamics. And so, yeah, that was right down at Friendship Camp, about 12 miles from here. And then we kind of went our separate ways, and here we are now, both in Americus, Georgia.
Back at it.
And so glad to be here with you in this moment. So tell me a little bit about Colton. Tell me about life growing up and what brought you here back to Americus.
All right, yeah, so I'm from around the area. I moved in when I was in middle school. My dad's a pastor, so we moved around a couple of times. But in middle school, we moved to Americus. He pastored Pleasant Grove Baptist Church, heading out towards Leslie. And we moved here when I was about 13 and wound up transferring to Americus High School, Americus Sumter back then. Now it's just Sumter County High School. But Americus Sumter. Transferred there when I was in 11th grade, finished out, graduated there. Actually met my wife on the first day of school in first period. So,
and just right there, you just knew.
Proposed on the spot. No. So, you know, it was me trying to make some smart comments. So, like, she would laugh at me, but she didn't hear anything I said. So she was just kind of you know.
Yeah.
But no, we wound up dating a few weeks later, had a couple of high school breakups, but, you know, wound up sticking it out. And,
wow.
You know, the couple that graduates together stays together.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right. Well, tell me a little bit about what it's like growing up with a father as a pastor.
So it's different, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's different. I remember, you know, I was really uptight. I think, especially as a middle schooler and a high schooler, I was really uptight. Very, very like rigid, obviously, in like moral issues, but maybe a little bit more rigid on things that like I didn't necessarily have to be rigid on. So I definitely wasn't like the funnest person to be around if you were definitely trying to like get into some trouble or anything like that. But so I kind of it was kind of this, honestly, it's kind of like an added pressure, and it's not something your parents do to you or like want to have on you. It's just kind of like, you know, as a pastor and a pastor's family, there's just kind of this like reputation you're supposed to uphold. I mean, I know everybody says pastors' kids are the worst. That's kind of the cliche, but I mean, honestly, I think for the most part, there's this kind of like pressure to be the kind of person you're supposed to be the kind of student, leader, youth group member, everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
do you feel like you kind of, not in a sense, I'm going to use the word thrive with that? Like, were you encouraged by that, or do you feel like you were just like, I've got to be the pastor's kid in that way? Or did your personality actually enjoy that? It was like, I'd like to live up to these particular.
Yeah, so I definitely like wanted to be a certain type of person, and I would say, you know, I joke with my parents all the time that I was their golden child. You know, I've given them the least amount of gray hair of all their children. But I do think there is a weight to it. You know, I think there's a psychological and even spiritual weight to it. You know, especially if you can kind of internalize this idea of being perfect and not having any flaws and having to always say the right things and do the right things. And so, yeah, that can be a little weighty, and it can be, you know, not a good thing all the time, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So where would you see? We kind of talked about like our parents, if they're people of faith. That, you know, it's kind of their faith that we're wearing for a long time. Yeah. Where did it become kind of your faith, or you know, how did that happen?
So I think I always embraced the faith from a very young age, and of course, you know, you just kind of think what your parents think. I remember having, whether it's like religious or political conversations when you're like in middle school, because, you know, that's what middle schoolers do.
Yeah.
Or they think they do. And so, you know, everybody just kind of repeats what they hear their parents say and that kind of stuff. But I would say college, which I stayed here locally, but college, really kind of getting out, hearing some different voices, experiencing some different things, having different small groups, friendships, leadership in my faith. I would think I really began to kind of like form some kind of like mental categories and ideas kind of like on my own, independently of my parents then, yeah.
Yeah. So would you say there was like challenges, obstacles that kind of pressed against your faith at that time that you can think back on and say, this really made me really have to consider?
So no, I don't think I went through any like kind of crisis of faith or anything like that. I think I just I think I was able, that weight that I think I had of, having to be perfect and the right kind of person and say this and, kind of always towing the line. I think I just kind of like internalized the idea of grace more. And so that was kind of just transformative and like really life-giving for me in my spiritual walk. So
Yeah. It seems to me, I think this is again coming from the ministry standpoint, that's the term that really defines the difference between Christianity and maybe other religions, where it becomes, it's not about what you do, but it's about what's been done for you, which is obviously that grace, that grace moment. So yeah, you mind kind of stepping into that a little bit and just kind of describing that?
So I think I am the kind of person, I'm super introspective. I like analyze every single thing I say, every single thing I do. Like I'm telling you, speaking of like middle school, I can think back to like stupid things I've said and done when I was like 13 or 14. I'm like 28 now. Yeah. And I'll still sit back and think about, man, that was terrible. Man, that was awful. Like, why would I do that? And like I made like an offhand comment, I think, to someone. I was thinking about something in my planning time today. I made an offhand comment to someone yesterday. And I don't think they took any offense, nothing to it. But I'm kind of thinking like, dude, that was pretty dumb. Like, why did you say that? And so that's just kind of the constant struggle for me is being very introspective, overanalyzing everything I do and say. I think it's kind of like a desire for perfection. And so I think one of the things I've grown in since I was in college and just really tell myself every day is like, I don't have to be perfect. That's not the point. I believe in a God who is my Father, and He's gracious, and He's loving, and He's kind, and He's done so much on my behalf, and He is accepting me. He has accepted me, and I don't have to like earn that acceptance. And so I just think maybe that's not the case for most people, but I just think I have to tell myself that every day. Like, this is not about my performance. This is not about how awesome of a person I think I am or how anybody else thinks I am. It's about God's opinion of me. So.
Yeah. All right, so going back to kind of the 13-year-old who shows up, is engaging in life, what did you want to be growing up at 13, 16?
Man, I don't know. At 13, it definitely wasn't a pastor. I've done some pastoring in my past. But I just remember thinking, man, I see what my dad has to deal with. Like, why would I want to deal with these people, right? And I think every person who's like ever involved in some type of church at some point in time goes, church people, But I was like, I didn't want to deal with that. I don't know if I had something I was really set on or not. But I think actually it was about when I was 16. I actually was kind of like, man, I think I do want to get into ministry. And believe it or not, I don't know if I've ever told you this. Or not, but it was actually started really happening a year at Friendship Camp, and you were preaching.
Wow.
Yeah, you and Mike Brooks, you were preaching that year, and I remember the night, man. It was Thursday night, and I even remember like you preached on David and Goliath. No idea why that did something personally for me or whatever, but I just remember thinking, I was like, dude, I think this is it. I think this is for real. And so I started having some conversations with my dad after that.
Wow.
And about 16, 17 years old, just went like head first into it. Yeah, I want to be in ministry for sure.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. I think about moments like that. We go off on a camp or we have that experience and how vital it is. I mean, even now, even today, even as adults, we try to go find some common ground just to get away, just for a little bit, out of the daily grind, out of the kind of common things that we see all the time, to get into an environment where other people are kind of maybe thinking some of the same things and trying to figure that out. And the value of an intense community for a short period of time, I think is very encouraging. And I think that's one of the things that we need to seek. Seek for our children, seek for ourselves. I get invited to conferences and things like that, not to speak, but to come and be a part. And I think about that. It is so important because it gets out of that daily framework to say, what would my life be like? And you get to experience different things. So, and I really enjoyed those times. That was fun. Just hanging out with students and just trying to figure this all out ourselves. So, but no, That's encouraging. Thank you even for sharing that. So that was a turning point in your life, and it began to kind of transition that. So then you go to GSW. What are you going for? What's your degree in?
Man, I changed, not officially, but I changed my major probably like 8 times. I just had no idea. I knew that I wanted to be in ministry, and I knew that I was going to go to graduate school, going to go to seminary. And so I was like, man, I'm just trying to get out of here with a bachelor's degree, you know?
Yeah.
And so I wound up sticking with psychology.
Okay.
So I wound up sticking with psychology. There were some professors that I really liked in my psychology, that I'd already had in psychology, and I kind of liked them in the psychology and sociology department. And so I said, hey, I like y'all's classes, like some of the things we talk about and some of the things we're doing. So let's stick with psychology. You know?
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, okay. And so how did that then take on to, were you still obviously dating? Were you married at that time? I mean, what's the...
Okay, so yeah, my wife and I, Molly, we continued dating. She stayed local as well. We got engaged at the end of our freshman year in college. Turner Field, by the way. So she's a big Braves fan, so had to tee that up. They wouldn't let me on the big screen, but I did try. And then at the end of our sophomore year, we got married. So yeah, everybody was looking at us like we were nuts. You know, 20-year-old, broke, both still in college, thinking like, what are y'all doing? But you know, 8 years later, here we are. We're making out. You know, so
that's awesome. Well, it's encouraging in the sense that, all right, you're still trying to figure out what to do, but you know you want to marry this person. That's solid, man. That's awesome. All right, so she's still is she going to GSW during that time as well? So
So we were I wound up graduating a semester before her. She did. She's in education as well, so she did student teaching, and it took her a little bit longer to do that, and so I wound up graduating a semester early.
Okay. Then after GSW, where do you go? Where's your heart set? Where's your mind set? What does that look like?
So we knew we wanted to go to seminary. Well, I won't say we. My wife went kicking and screaming. But she had, my wife Molly, she lived in the same house for like her entire 20 years of life, gone to the same church. I mean, just very grounded here at Americus, even more so than me. And so we decided to go to Louisville, Kentucky, to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, living just across the river in a town called Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Okay.
But we went up there for the next 3 years, yeah.
Okay. And what were you studying there? What were you looking into? What were some highlights of those 3 years?
Yeah, so I went to get a master's in divinity. I wound up graduating with that. Highlights, I think, just really the amount of reading that I got to do. And I know that, you know, reading isn't everybody's favorite. And you think about like academic and research reading. But man, my mind, I was just exposed to so many different things. And, you know, Southern, as we call it, it has a very like big reputation of being a very conservative and like theologically conservative school. What it is, 100%. But our professors like made us read deep and wide, and so we got to read all kinds of sources and all kinds of different viewpoints. And it was just, I you know, for the first time in my life, I started to change my mind on some things, you know, because I got to like read other people's viewpoints and arguments and compare them with my own and what I think about things. And so I think just the ability to expand your mind, see some things differently, and even change your mind. You know, I don't know how often we actually change our mind about, you know, things that are important to us. And so I think that's like one of the biggest highlights for me.
Yeah, I would definitely say people are okay with change as long as they're making the changes. And
that's right. Yeah.
It's especially leaders. Leaders love change, unless they're called to change themselves in that sense, because it's hard. It's hard to change.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. So you've got this psychology degree, the sociology degree. You go to that. You're opening that. I can just tell. I mean, there are so many times in our lives where we don't realize we're, I guess to say, like this bubble, like this cultural bubble, or kind of this idea of everyone thinks the way that I think. So obviously that's huge. That's beneficial to you, being in ministry, but also being wanting to help teach what's it like to serve and love God in this context, recognizing that there's other contexts in which people serve and love God. So would you say that your degree at GSW was helpful to that, like to help broaden that perspective as well?
Oh, yeah. I think back to conversations that I had, people I met. I mean, some of my favorite conversations are with people that like I know 100% disagree with me on the biggest issues in life, and I value that. I thrive with that. I love that, man. One of my favorite professors, sociology professor, GSW, still here, Jamie McLennan. I call him J-Mac, and used to play basketball with him. Even when I was in high school, he would come out to his neighbor's like cul-de-sac. We played basketball together, so I knew him going in. But man, I just used to sit in his class after hours, and we would just talk. And he challenged me, I challenged him, and it was fun. When I first moved back to town last year, he was one of my first visits on campus. So I went.
Wow.
I went and found him after and sat down and talked to him, and it's just like we never stopped talking, you know.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to get back into it. And it was fun. So
wow. Well, that's definitely important what you just said, because as we kind of see even shiftings and people with their views, especially on social media, and things are going so polarized, it's very, very hard to have just intense conversations where the relationship is actually more important than just the idea or the thought or the right. And so just hearing that, like, I hope that people are listening today and go, that's still possible today. It was possible then, it's possible now. So do you have any thoughts on that as far as, you seeing the climate change, but yet still finding value and wanting to intentionally pursue? It's okay to have conversations with people that you disagree with. Like, share a little bit of that, kind of your...
Yeah, so I mean, I'm a very hard-headed person, and I like my opinions. So my wife, if she ever watches this, will say yes. And I know people have always disagreed vehemently, but I mean, it's no secret, last, 6 to 10 years of American life, it almost seems like it's impossible to disagree peacefully, to disagree amiably, and to just say, hey, at the end of the day, we can be friends. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like, it's okay if you disagree with me. It's okay if you don't like something that I do. It's okay if, I don't like something you're doing, And I think that's one of my biggest, I don't know how in the world we're going to get back there. It's probably going to start with being neighbors, everything this podcast is about, and really just understanding and getting to know people outside of what they think. Because at the end of the day, we're more than our opinions, and we're even more than just our beliefs. We're human beings. And as important as those things are, we're human beings, and we can connect on so many levels, and we can appreciate and understand each other on so many levels, even if we disagree on some very significant things.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. I'm interested on how to continue to create those pathways for people to be able to experience tension, awkward silence. Where the culture that I've seen is it's just hard to be in a place where it feels uncomfortable. But we need to get used to being uncomfortable again. And so I'm interested in that as far as where that goes and how to create those. And I think, again, just sitting down and considering other people and what they're experiencing and what they're thinking, and just listening, I think is probably the biggest impact that I've seen, is not trying to go in necessarily with this huge agenda, but just going in and saying, hey, if I'm living next to someone, they have needs, they have emotions, we might not come to the same conclusions, but how do they know that I'm for them, whether we disagree or agree? And that's just, it's a very hard thing to do. I would say, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on just the relational capacity for people. It seems to me that, we're building relationships based on more of a transaction. Like, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? I love to hang out with people that look like me, talk like me, act like me, because then really I'm kind of worshiping myself, because everyone else around me is agreeing with me. But then that tension of not causes you to learn, causes you to widen that perspective. So just your thoughts on kind of just the relational capacity of people, and what are some things that you've noticed that would be helpful for someone that's listening today going, when I hear someone in my mind and they're saying things that I disagree with and I start to boil, like, what are some things that would be encouraging to hear?
Yeah, so I think real growth and real learning always comes at the end of some kind of discomfort, right? So I'm thinking about my students. I teach 7th and 8th graders every day. And anytime we're working on essays right now, we're finishing up reading some novels, and I've got presenting them with these big essay questions, and we're trying to tie together some of the themes of the novels. And I'm like, all right, guys, it's essay project week. We're going to work on this. And I just get this collective set of, groans. Like, this is terrible. And I said, guys, and they just look at me like, yeah, dude, you're like 80. Even with me, they tell me I have bad knees and all that kind of stuff. I'm 28. But they look at me like, oh, yeah, you're giving us some granddad, get off my lawn lecture kind of thing. But I'm like, look, guys, you're never going to grow. You're never going to learn anything if you don't push yourself, if you don't try. And so I think we, like you said, we've got to be willing to live with that level of discomfort. When someone is saying something, asserting something, even loudly, that we disagree with or we think is wrong, I think we just got to realize that getting in a shouting match or proving them wrong in the moment, doesn't really accomplish anything. Yeah. But sitting down and listening and really understanding a person to see where they come from, there's a lot more power in that. And I think when you understand where a person's coming from, then their viewpoint might make a little more sense, right? We all have our experiences. We all come to bring we bring our different baggages to the table, our different lived experiences. And so there's a reason why we think the way we think. And most of the time it's personal. It's human. It's because we've seen this happen before. We've seen someone affected a certain way. We've seen someone hurt. We've seen someone taken advantage of. And so we're so adamant and strong in our opinions because we think they have, life and death. We think they are real world. And so when you realize that the person who disagrees with you but really has a legitimate reason to think the way they think, I think you're starting to think, okay, I need to see this from their viewpoint. Even if never in a million years I would think this, I need to understand where they're coming from. And that takes work. It takes being uncomfortable. And most of the time we're just kind of lazy and we don't really like to think that hard and dive that deep into it. It takes some work and some effort, I think.
That's huge. That's huge. I think one of the initial responses of anger is people don't feel heard, and so they get angry. Yeah. And so that's a really great way to say, hey, people need to be able to be heard. Mm-hmm. Even if they're wrong in your opinion, they need to be heard. And so I think that's huge. So you take that. So you've got this degree. Go to seminary. Where do you go from there?
Right after there, we actually move to this small town, and I mean small. So Americus is not small compared to this town. Okay. This town is less than a third the size of Americus. Jackson, Alabama, Southwest Alabama. I want to give them a shout out. It's about an hour north of Mobile, and Mobile is the only civilization close. Yeah. Right? And we had no idea what we were doing. We just had a daughter at this time. So I graduated seminary. We're getting towards the end of May 2019. I graduated on Friday, and our first daughter was born on Tuesday.
Wow. So
my wife is in the hot sun at Southern Seminary at my graduation, 9+ months pregnant.
That is a supporting wife.
I mean, man. Awesome, right? And
that's great.
And then literally a month later, I'm taking her to a place she's never been to, a house she's never seen except from video, people she's never met, and we're moving down the middle of nowhere, Southwest Alabama. And I tell you what, it was one of the best experiences of our life. Right? Yeah.
So talk about being uncomfortable.
Yeah, being uncomfortable for sure, but it just wound up speaking of just the power of the people in a place, man. One of the big lessons I really learned there is people are what make a place, right? So we didn't have a lot to do, in Americus. We don't have a whole lot of things to do, We do have more restaurant choices here, so be thankful for what you do have, right? But man, those people, we had never ever been more embraced and loved and served and cared for. By a group of people. I was working as a student pastor at a church there, First Baptist Church of Jackson, and man, those people, every single thing you could think of, they took care of us from the moment we got there. We had people painting our house before we got there. They're painting our house. They're fixing up all these kinds of things, putting furniture in. I mean, just wild. And they took every need you could think of. Even more so, they just took care of us. Yeah. And man, those people just loved us. And it was the best possible place for us to be. Coming fresh out of seminary, having a child, Even we're 5 hours away. We're 5 hours away from home. Then you want to be close to grandparents, but I mean, it was almost man, we had 5 new sets of grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and babysitters and just everything. They just took care of us.
Wow. Yeah. That idea is contagious. It gets you excited. I know that it's impacted you, and you say, man, I hope that people feel like this
Yeah.
when they think of me, you know. And I love that idea. The people creates the place and gives that atmosphere. And so you were there for how long?
For 2 years.
For 2 years,
Yeah.
okay. And you were the student minister there?
Yeah, student minister at First Baptist Jackson. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then you feel called to come back to Americus?
Yeah.
Or
So
what's the...
it was the COVID 2020, man. It was a wild time. You know, 2020 was a wild time. But I think a lot of us get PTSD when we just hear 2020.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know. I don't know if it was just kind of we can just be a little vulnerable here. But I don't know if it was kind of some anxiety, even maybe some depression I was just kind of dealing with for several months. And it had nothing to do with our situation. It was the craziest thing. I loved my job. I loved what I did. We loved where we were. We loved our friends. It was just one of those things where just sometimes the way you feel doesn't make sense, you know? And so for months, I'm praying. I'm thinking I can go back to my journal where I'm writing these things out, and I'm just like asking the Lord, like, hey, like, what am I supposed to do? Why do I feel this way? And I just started thinking towards the end of 2020, thinking, all right, maybe we just need to go home. Americus is home. Maybe we just need to go home and try to figure some things out,
Yeah.
And my wife, who was, reluctantly left Americus to go to Louisville, when I've told her about, hey, what if we go back home? She's like, hey, I'm cool with that. But she's like, I'm fine here too, And so that was how great the place was.
Yeah.
But the more we started talking about it, thinking about it, we're like, hey, if there's a job opportunity, let's check it out for real. And so wound up getting a job opportunity, job offer, prayed about it for, month and a half, worked through the whole process. And it just kind of seemed like the Lord was opening up the doors.
Yeah.
And it just at the time kind of made sense for us to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that received from the people in Jackson? Were they happy for you? Were they excited for you? Kind of what was their dynamics?
Definitely, they were like, man, everything's going great, and it's kind of soon for you to get out of here. But I think I was pretty vulnerable with them, kind of shared even from church meetings, from the pulpit, kind of what was going on. And they understood, They were nothing but helpful and gracious, just like we were coming in, and just like going out, nothing but helpful and gracious and kind. Took care of us. We'd only been there like 2 years, and they give us this like big going away party, and people were giving us gifts, and I was like, man, most of the time somebody leaves a church in like 2 years, they're like, all right, dude, get out of here.
Yeah.
But just even on the way out, taking care of us, they supported us. Even last fall, I went back several times. I was the chaplain of our high school football team. And our football team had a magical run last year. Went to the Final Four in the state. I drove to like 3 straight playoff games. Friday afternoons, I'm driving 5 hours. And they were just glad to be back anytime I'm there, and they're glad for me to be there as well. So.
Wow. I love that. We're talking about being next level neighbors. We're talking about neighboring well. That's the kind of, when you're doing things not for something, but because of something.
Yeah.
What they've experienced in their lives gave them the opportunity to say, we can give, and there is return, obviously, with you being there. But even afterwards, we got to get to a place where we're able to give even when we don't receive from that particular person. And I think that's neighboring well, is sacrifice, vulnerability, those types of things. So it's just great to hear those stories, because they don't realize that just as much as you needed them to be there for you when you arrived, for them to be there for you when you left, to that degree, that carries with you.
It does.
It carries with you, and we need to know, people need to hear that, because they need to know, well, if this first person's coming in, and then they're leaving, it matters.
For sure.
That matters. So I think that's really, really huge. So let me ask you this. So now you guys are in Americus, and currently you're working at the Furlow Charter School. In Americus. Tell us a little bit about what you do there.
So I teach middle school English, 7th and 8th graders. What a joy, They're the best time of life for human growth and development. And I'm also the FCA sponsor, so Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I lead that club, and this year, for some reason, I will be coaching basketball. Nice. So any community support we can get there, help us out. But coaching basketball and being assistant coach for baseball as well. So.
Okay, so the basketball portion is a new thing for the school. Was it
a new thing for me? They've kind of had programs before, but it hasn't really like lasted. And I'm actually going to be coaching girls, and I don't think they've ever had a high school girls team. So yeah, this is going to be our first year.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we've even had I've already had, and just Americus, we've already had several community members, donate and support our team, and so we're feeling the support and the love even from our community. And,
that's awesome.
And they're already, so yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, if anyone's looking to support
there you go.
Furlow or basketball or just invest into some students, basketball is a huge thing. And so give to that, be a part of that, show up for games, encourage the students to continue their athletic abilities, but also be in relationship, be in community with people. So no, that's great. So wait, it's 6th and 7th grade?
7th and 8th grade.
7th and 8th. So
last year I had all three. I had
is
6,
that 13 and 14-year-old? I mean, what's the...
Yeah, so 12, pretty much 12 to 15.
12 to 15.
You got some early birthdays, some late birthdays, but yeah, pretty much 12 to 15.
So what are 12 to 15-year-olds into?
Man, I don't know. I TikTok for sure. TikTok and Snapchat. And I make sure once or twice a week, I give them like a get off my lawn lecture about how it's destroying their brains. Just to hear the collective groans.
It would make sense coming from an English teacher, right? Someone who cares about written language and the history of it and the importance of having long conversations and really hashing out things. And then just getting 150 characters.
Yeah.
I can definitely see the tension in that. And do you see some students really getting involved in that, getting encouraged by some of the classes there, or I'm always just curious about the culture of young students.
So it's tough. I mean, not every 7th grader is waking up in the morning and getting super hyped about reading Tolkien. We're finishing up The Hobbit with my 7th graders. So, some of them are like, oh, I love the adventures. We got treasures and dragons and dwarves and wizards, and they're like really into it. But some of them, it's just, it doesn't click for them. Yeah. But one of the coolest things is seeing something click for students when something else didn't. So last year, my 8th graders, we read the Odyssey. Nice. You talking about some adventures with 8th graders reading the Odyssey. But man, I remember it was getting towards the end of the semester and we're having an essay response time to it. Mm-hmm. And one of my students who I just kind of like have to goad and push and say, hey, come on, it's not because they don't have the capability of doing it, it's just because the motivation's not there. I remember them connecting something from the Odyssey to their current world, to their current life, into their personal life. And they just wrote the best essay response. And I was thinking, I went to him afterwards and I said, dude, now I know you can do this now, so you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I expect this all the time now. And so when the students just find something that really clicks for them and they're really interested in, that light bulb turns on, it's really awesome to just see their creative juices and their energy just pour into it, right? Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah. I mean, I say it a lot just in private conversations, but I love the idea that we are a story-formed people. And so stories matter, narratives matter. There's a reason why we get attracted to kind of the hero dynamics and all of this is because we were created to engage in a story, to believe in the story. And things like the Odyssey have, Tolkien, they have principles that are far reaching than just the book, that we can apply to our lives. And when students get it does get exciting. So let me ask you this. In learning, being a teacher, what are some obstacles that you see that students are facing right now? Just even if there was a parent listening, as far as like with their children or thoughts in that, or even like a student minister who's looking at their 12 to 15-year-old and asking a teacher kind of what are some obstacles that you see in the kids' lives or in education itself? Yeah. So I think as far as education itself, and I mean, this is my 2nd year in education, so I probably have some like longtime educators that like groan at me, or they'll probably say, we've been saying this for years. Yeah. But I think the current model, and not just like our model, but like I would say the American model, maybe it's Western, I don't know. I think the model of like putting 20 kids in a room with one teacher,
I just think it's a struggle for a lot of students because you just have a different range of where students are, their capabilities, their interest, and their ability to pay attention, stay seated, focused for a long time. And so I think one of the biggest issues is large group. It's kind of like a large group dynamic. And I just think for most students, I think a smaller group dynamic. You know, I mean, when you have schools and colleges advertising, they want to advertise their student to teacher ratio.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a huge thing. From what I've learned in just my very limited time, some students that might struggle in a large group setting, if I just had like 4 or 5 of them, you know, and I know like logistically it's just not possible right now. But if I had some of those students in a setting of 4 or 5, yeah, we'd goof off and, you know, we'd still have the, hey, get back on task. But man, I just think their learning potential would just skyrocket. And I think the light bulb going off and what they can do and what they're capable of, I think it would just change the dynamics so much.
Yeah. I like that. And I would see even, you know, being and paying attention to college, and we think that students in college, even college students, even older students, they don't value relationships or they don't care. But man, when someone invests in their lives, growing up in the church, growing up as a believer and as a Christian, and I will tell you that my life knowing Christ has been connected to a community of people that have invested into me. Like I can't talk about Jesus and what he's done for me without connecting the fact that he brought people into my life that invested into me. And so when kids feel invested into, when they feel that their potential, and you don't just hear that, but like you can see that, that makes complete sense of just bringing value to students.
And I think varsity relationships matter so much. I mean, I could get onto a kid. Maybe they did something just really ridiculous, and Mr. Taunton gets his game face on, and he's like, "This is ridiculous. What are you doing?" I mean, like 30 minutes later, that kid is wanting to come up and joke and say, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And I think they long for those relationships.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big aspect of it too. The learning. That's why I like coaching. You get to build deeper relationships with students. You're spending some more time with them. You get to be in a different aspect. You don't just have to be Mr. Taunton. You can kind of put on the coach Taunton then. And so I think students, whether middle school, high school, college, I think they are hungry for people who might know a little more than them, who can teach them a little stuff. I think they're hungry to have a positive relationship with a mentor or a teacher and somebody who can invest in them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. Well, let me ask you this, kind of going back to kind of your college days. I know you kind of grew up in Americus, but I'm always interested coming into Americus for 5 months now and just seeing the potential for the community networking. You have the city of Americus, you have downtown Americus, you have GSW, you have the tech. I mean, there seems to be a lot of potential for thriving and for growth. What would you say? And again, I mean, you were from here, so I don't know if you could, but maybe some of the college students, when you were going to college, what were their thoughts of the city and downtown and connecting the college to the city? And then maybe even today, like as you think about it, well, now I'm older and I'm out of college. Just those dynamics. Just coming in saying, hey, how does the city and the college, do they see each other as valuable? Do they see each other as kind of a network? And just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think you're starting to see more and more of that connection between the city and especially Southwestern. I'm walking around everywhere. I see the Day of Giving promos, and I briefly worked with the foundation at GSW. I'll give Steven Snyder a shout out over there. They're doing really great work, connecting people, connecting with alumni and donors and even businesses and folks in the city. They're doing a great job over there supporting. I think the current administration and leadership has a great vision for building that connection. And I think GSW and even the tech, I think those are just key for the development and the future of Americus. I think if we can really find a way to make those relationships just accelerate and work together, more harmoniously, I think Americus can grow. I think people can look at GSW a little bit different. Because I think, getting back to the original question, I think that a lot of students that come here, they come from Middle Georgia, South Georgia, Southwest Georgia. So a lot of students are going to drive home. on Fridays after class, after school. A lot of times, most classes don't meet on Friday. And I think the town and the college could maybe business leaders, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whatever all the technical, political, governmental things are you got to do there.
Yeah.
I think we could really make it where, hey, like I don't have to go home on the weekends. Maybe we need to get together for some more entertainment options. More. I love what Downtown Americus is doing. We got First Fridays involving the community, and so I think just more of that positive, creative. Let's sit down at the table and see how we can make this thing, a place where everyone wants to be a part of.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a big key, especially for the college, in growing and developing itself and Americus as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I love hearing what people would love to see. For example, downtown. Like if they had this downtown, I could see myself coming a little bit more. Whether that's a family dynamic, more kid-oriented things, or if it's more college-oriented. What are college students doing on Saturdays if they're in town? Like, do they come to downtown? And if so, what are they coming for? And what would they come into downtown for? So it's just really interesting. Being able to answer those questions, I think, obviously will help people in the college feel more connected, maybe even stay, but also the city itself, downtown itself, enjoy them coming and even spending their money here. That's great. So it works out for everybody. So I'm very interested in those conversations, and I think that if we just continue to have that positive perspective and, hey, look, listen, if you've been told no 400 times, ask again. One of the things that when you're trying to be a good neighbor, next level neighbor, is pessimism. It can be really, really destructive. And if you haven't been taught to hear the word no 500 times, you're going to really struggle, especially in a society, because people want to do certain things or whatever. So I know on your end, if you used to work for GSW and calling people and stuff like that, you're going to hear no 500 times. But it's important to learn to receive that and just keep pushing forward, because in order to be a neighbor, you're going to get hurt. You're going to share some vulnerable moments, and people are going to leave, or people are going to move on, but you got to learn how to deal with that. So, well, let me ask you this: if you had, so we talked a little bit about it already, your dynamics of some things that we could do downtown. Is there anything in particular that you would love to see downtown? You being from Americus, and
let me see. Okay, so I'm a huge movie guy.
Okay.
And logistically downtown, I don't know if it worked, but I definitely lament the fact. I know we only had a 2-screener, but I lament the fact that we don't have a movie theater, and I mean maybe I don't know, some kind of whether it's family, whether it's some type of drive-in or just a one auditorium. I feel like if we could have some kind of like movie scene, a movie action, just something to get out and do, I feel like that would be a really big plus for downtown. I think you come, you park, you go to one of the restaurants, and then just walk to the movie theater, I think, logistically, no idea, not an architect or a city planner, but I think something like that. I'm just a movie guy. And I think something, and you could make it unique, because obviously we're not building like a Cineplex or a 16 stadium place, but something that's just unique and fun to come to.
That's awesome. One of the things that me and my wife have talked about a few times is just the idea of ice cream. I would love to come down and just get ice cream. Would give my kids something to do. We could walk around, just throw some ice cream on it. There's so many little potentials, and there's some great places here downtown, or at least right on the outskirts of that. As people come in, they're looking for that. So, well, let me ask you this. I got some couple like rapid fire questions.
All right.
Just to get to a little bit to know you a little bit more. Let me ask you this: What is a kind of a normal daily schedule for you? What does your life look like?
So I wake up probably as late as I can. I wake up as late as I can. I roll out of bed and hurry and get ready to go to school. I'm at school by 7:45 every morning. I'm there till about 3:45 if I'm not coaching, and then come home. Try to work out. Won't say I do it every day. You don't have to take too many looks at me to realize I don't do it every day. try to work out, and then just hang out with the family. And our family dynamic is we eat dinner and then we turn on the Braves.
Okay.
So I mean that's really our routine. If there's 162 baseball games a year, we're probably watching 140 of them.
Wow.
I mean, we don't give Netflix too much run at night during baseball season.
Yeah.
We just turn on the Braves, trying to raise our daughter Caroline upright, and we're a big Braves family for sure.
I will tell you this: I don't watch baseball, but I would think that if anyone needs to get paid the money that they get paid, it probably would be baseball players because that's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games.
It's a lot of games.
Season. It's a long season.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So let me ask you this: what's your current favorite either song that you're listening to or even book that you've read?
Okay, book. Oh man, what did I just finish? I just finished something and I can't even remember. But I've read this semi-recently, within the past couple of years. I think it changed my perspective. But man, East of Eden, John Steinbeck.
Okay.
They say it's a classic, but I think it's like a classic.
Nice.
So I think John Steinbeck, East of Eden, is like one of the best works of literature ever. It's very deep thematically. Explores, the brokenness of humanity, our need for love and relationships, and the lengths we go to when we don't have that. And I think, man, I think that's probably at the top of all-time favorite books. I read that in the past couple of years, for sure.
That's awesome. All right, so if you're looking for a good book to read, this is a really great recommendation.
Yeah, it's a long read, but it's definitely worth it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. I was going to ask you what your favorite family activity is. Is it watching the Braves or is it other?
It's probably sports related.
Okay.
We're big Braves fans, big college football fans. I'm a Tennessee fan. Most people that know me know that, and it's Gator Hate Week. So any of the Florida fans out there, no love lost this week. And my daughter already knows to say boo Gators. So family activities definitely we're a sports family for sure.
Awesome. All right, well let me ask you this, and then we'll kind of step out. So if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Anywhere in the world, probably Australia.
Nice.
And I don't know why, outside of the fact that it just kind of has that aura and mystique of being kind of wild and out there, It's just so far away. So I'd say I'm going Australia. I'm going to go hang out with some kangaroos.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, Colton, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's really great to get a chance to get to know you, catch back up with you, and just to get to hear what God's doing in your life and the importance of relationships, the importance of being involved in students' lives, people's lives, because relationships matter, and the sacrifices that it takes to build genuine relationships. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that for students in Alabama, for doing that even with students here in Americus, and we're just looking forward to where you go next too. Yeah. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, man, for sure.
Awesome. All right, Prabhu, good to go. Man,
we did it.
That was great, man. See, it was great. Dude, I was, yeah.